So we assume that because of the international press coverage, Meghan knows you've had a stroke.
Of course she has to know.
I'm taking it from that she hasn't called you.
No.
No phone call?
No.
How long has it been now?
It's been 4 years.
So just radio silence?
Exactly. If she doesn't turn up for a stroke, if that doesn't move her, what would?
There's a lot that's been lost already. And I grieve a lot. I mean, I've lost my father.
Dad didn't do anything. And it's just, she just woke up one day in a new world and decided that she doesn't have any family.
I believe she had a clear motive for writing family off because it would seemingly justify and perhaps delay the revelation of all of the lies that she had told the royal family.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Okay, so he does a double shrug, and that's going to be important later on to know that, you know, given that he's had a stroke, he can still raise both shoulders, because if we don't know he can raise both shoulders, which the double shrug is usually a sense of, hey, you know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about that? If we thought that he couldn't do a double shrug, then all bets might be off on single shrugs, which can, you know, often denote some indecision or some not knowing about something, or, you know, you can get a single shrug in a moment of deception along with other clusters. So it's important. He can do a double shrug. He's able to indicate four as well. That's important as well. You know, the thing that interests me a lot about this is Meghan in that talks about grief. I've lost my father, but instead of showing any grief, she does a head tilt and looks for the reaction of the person interviewing. Now, I only bring that up because we've done Meghan before, but understand throughout this documentary, this interview, it is carefully chosen what is being put in to show Meghan, what is against the parents. So it's clear documentary making. They're trying to tell a specific story about these groups of people. But the most important thing about that is baseline of he can do a double shrug. It'll be important later on. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, a couple of things I like, Mark. First of all, let's talk about stroke. Stroke is unpredictable what it will do because it depends on the part of the brain it impacts. So if it impacted the part that controls muscles in his face, he's going to have trouble. If it impacts the part that controls a side, he's going to have trouble. But there's all kinds of things that can happen. One of the most odd I've ever heard is when when Hefner had a stroke, he lost the ability to read is the only reason he had a stroke. Really interesting. So it can affect the brain in different ways. So we can't blanketly say, well, he had a stroke, so he can't do X or Y. Mark, I appreciate you bringing that piece up. There's an interesting thing he does consistently here, and watch for it in him and in his children. That's single brow rise, and it's not related to stroke. One of the things that I always say is fish taste like what they swim in. And by that, I mean, if you nurture children a certain way, they're going to also behave that certain way. And a lot of times, whether it's biology or nurture, people will pick up the same traits. So we're going to watch and see that skepticism and condemning of one single eyebrow rise. We'll see it as we go through here, and we'll see it in more than one of these family members. Kind of interesting for me. He's adapting in that upright hand at the cane. He's releasing nervous energy for some reason. It's probably apprehension about what the question is going to be. He probably has no idea where this thing is going. And then we see that single brow rise. Meghan, when she's talking about losing her father, does that head bobble with narrowed eyes and a vocal fry. We've covered them in great detail in the Oprah interview, and you can find that in our videos. But this one, you can see that there's something going on in uncertainty about her wording there. Maybe she's defining what lost her father means. We don't know, but we know something's going on in her head. There's lots of reasons that family dysfunction can happen. We're going to hear a lot of reasons as things go through here, but there's clearly some of that. I'm not going to say these people are redneck, but I'm going to say they're on the spectrum. I'll just leave that right there. And as we go through, you make up your own mind how far on the spectrum. The sister is demonstrative with her face. Some of that could be MS because the way you have to overcome some of the signals. But there's a discernible pattern. You see that brow rise. You see her jut her chin. When she juts her chin out, being emphatic with language at clear, she exposes her lower teeth. Whether it's true or not, what she says about Meghan, she believes it. That's all that matters. And I think that drama like this within families, and there's a dramatic age difference between them. I believe she was 16 when Meghan was born, and the brother was 14 when Meghan was born. So there's a dramatic age difference, but there's a ton of different reasons things can happen in families. Some people like drama, others don't. I would say drama is stranded intellectual capacity. If I got nothing to do with my time and you give me a reason to dwell on it, and then how it's expressed is based on social norms for that person. So Jerry Springer took advantage of the ones who had very weak social norms or very strong social norms. I would say, Mark, for example, the royal family may have some drama, but it would be very poorly expressed. There wouldn't be a whole lot of it. Chase, what do you got?
This is honest behavior, and it's behavior of people that are in pain. And we'll see more of this in a minute. Thomas, the dad here, is almost at the point of tears, I think, or he's very emotional about this. You can see his mouth and chin quiver as he's essentially mentally processing that he won't see her again, because the insinuation she's not coming until he's essentially dead is what's being said here. And when Tom raises his right hand with this number 4 here, he looks at his fingers, and I think this is to check that it's the right number being held up. This is very common. I've taken final exams on this kind of stuff. This is called dysarthria. This is different little things that happen with lack of coordination. And with any stroke, you're going to have some kind of impaired body language there. There's sometimes difficulty with gestures, eye contact, often due to some kind of physical or cognitive limits. And his stroke likely took place maybe in that area. And when somebody has a stroke that affects the somatosensory areas and motor cortex, this is most likely to be seen, this kind of behavior here. And just as a side note, if there's damage to other parts of the brain, like the basal ganglia or thalamus or cerebellum, this can have a really big impact on speech and nonverbal communication. Thing that Hugh Hefner had, Greg, that you were talking about, it's called Wernicke's aphasia, that damaged a part of the brain called the Wernicke's area. But anyway, the brother here is also using a gesture outside of his frame. And Greg always talks about the fish being this big versus the fish being this big and how people gesturing outside the frame. But this is also common when somebody's discussing something that's not necessarily true. They want to kind of put it to the side. But you'll also see it when people talk about social groups that they aren't involved in or they feel that they don't belong to. There's a famous video about a woman who was kicked out of a cult in the 1970s, I think. And she does this exact behavior. I think it was one of the Charles Manson girls. I'll have to find it and maybe put it up on one of our shorts. But for this clip, you see more sadness in the father and brother and more anger in the sister. So from a behavioral standpoint, I view all humans' emotions as stemming from 2 key emotions. It's either love or fear. Anger, for example, comes from fear. And I think that there's a feeling of fear of abandonment or betrayal there in the sister. And for the next 10 or so videos, each video, I'm going to give you a little pro tip. And each one, after each of the following videos, I'm going to give you a reason why a hypothetical, totally hypothetical, of course, malignant narcissist would do something like abandon their family. So reason number 1 is self-image protection. These malignant narcissists may want to maintain an idealized self-image, and they might perceive their family as a threat to this image. So if their family background doesn't fit this newly acquired wealth and status, cutting ties, denying their existence is a protection mechanism for identity. Scott, what do you got?
All right. You're right, Greg. The father, he adapts a little bit with that cane. I don't think he's got a lot to adapt with. I mean, as far as his neurological deficits go. So and you're right, I think he's apprehensive about what the question is going to be because he's sort of on the spot right now. He's done a bunch of things that are questionable, and he's on the impression, and he is correct, that they're going to bring those up and talk about him as they go through this. Now, the son, this is just my opinion, I think we're seeing the body language of someone who's a bit insecure with themselves, and they're not the type of person to be boisterous and go out and talk a lot. And I'm not saying he's shy. I'm saying he's just lacks confidence, because when he finishes his sentences and he starts the next ones, we see all these jerky little movements to make sure everything's okay. And I think he's not able to express himself with the vigor and verve that he would like to do, that he would like to. So I think that's why we're seeing all those jerky little movements and stuff with him, because he's trying to be confident, but he's just not. He doesn't know how to express himself confidently. And the sister, the stepsister, you're right, Greg, she has a very expressive face. A lot going on there. A lot more than you would usually have in a situation like this, I think. And again, that could be because maybe she's not able to express herself with her hands and use illustrators the way that most people are. So a lot of times she uses her head and her face. But you're right about that eyebrow going up, and it's a right one, which I can hardly do. I can hardly get mine up there. But I don't know if that's maybe some kind of genetic thing where or maybe not genetic, but maybe somewhere she's seen it 1,000 times, and she started doing that when she was a kid because she saw her dad do it all the time when she was a little kid. I think she's expressing a lot of controlled movements, though, in her face. But those, again, are combined. They're sort of mixed with these uncontrolled movements in her eyebrows, because we see a whole lot of eyebrow play in there. When they're up and they start down, that may have something to do with the multiple sclerosis, because of those muscles aren't working as well as they should, so they get a little bit jerky when they're going up and down. That could be it, but it's really interesting. So taking that into consideration, we're probably seeing pretty much what she's conveying when she's talking. I think that's what she's feeling emotionally as well, because we see a whole lot, and we'll go over this in a few minutes, of micro expressions in there. Be that because she has these again, the neurological deficits that may not make her expressions stay as long, or when she's switching from one to the other, we see other things happening. Who knows? That's a tough call. So this is going to be a really interesting group of videos as we go through here, trying to make decisions about what we think the emotions are they're experiencing as they go through it. All right, we good?
Yeah, Chase, one quick note, because good point. When people are out of frame, but they're illustrating something that should be out of frame, that makes sense. Hey, on the other hand, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's an important point. Yep.
One of those tape replays.
So we assume that because of the international press coverage, Meghan knows you've had a stroke.
Of course she has to know.
I'm taking it from that she hasn't called you.
No.
No phone call.
No.
How long has it been now?
It's been 4 years.
So just radio silence.
Exactly. If she doesn't turn up for a stroke, if that doesn't move her, what would?
There's a lot that's been lost already. And I grieve a lot. I mean, I've lost my father.
Dad didn't do anything. And she just woke up one day in a new world and decided that she doesn't have any family.
I believe she had a clear motive for writing family off because it would seemingly justify and perhaps delay the revelation of all of the lies that she had told the royal family.
If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.